28 billion, I mean, that was politically astute because it did give you... It took away a stick that you were beating Labour with quite effectively, didn't it?
Well, I think it leans in exactly what we're saying, which is a Labour Party that will flip and flop at every turn. We don't actually know what it is they really stand for.
Or new to your
and most
attack,
importantly,
Jonathan,
I mean, it just shows you they can't defend their own policies.
And we don't really understand or really know now what the commitment is in terms of this green investment. What does it mean? How much will be invested? You know, there's lots of questions still lying out there about what will actually happen.
I think it's around $5 billion a year they want to invest in green energy, but I'm not 100% sure.
Ultimately, what will happen is borrowing will go up, taxes will go up, and growth will go down, because as it always has done under...
Big man, yeah, our growth is at around 0%, yeah. So unless you're arguing we're going to have a negative growth, even though we're still, I think, in a technical recession, you know, it won't make sense. Like, borrowing is going to go up. Like, what are Labour going to do with the money? Give it to Dido Harding?
A Labour government...
Oh, wait, that's what you did.
What's happened recently, to 2009, as well as, let's not forget, the largest budget deficit. We inherited £150 billion a year back in 2010, which obviously had to be salted by David Cameron and George Osborne.
What is it now?
Jess, you know we had to...
So it was around 30-odd%. I think the Labour, I think our debt to GDP ratio was like 30% or something. 30, 40, now it's at nearly 100.
COVID pandemic, we had the war in Ukraine. That's £500 billion worth of public support we put into.
You could blame as well. There's always someone else's
They are real
fault.
events, unless you're saying COVID wasn't a real thing, which I would find bizarre. But ultimately, what happened is we gave furloughs, 80% of people's salary was paid to not work. Businesses getting grants and loans.
Do you think that the deficit that you inherited was then because of the global banking crash, or was that the Labour Party?
It was very reckless spending from a Labour government that was overspending what it had brought in. And using dangerous PFI contracts as we have in Stoke with a hospital, which has now got 200 fewer beds than when it was.
My man, like, you could argue about the PFI contracts, that's fine, but given that you guys cut the budget for dealing with the rack in the schools, the aerated concrete, I don't think you have a leg to stand on.
Than the old building, and actually stealing 20 million a year from the front line, and 88 schools in the PFI contract as well.
14 years. Maybe you could have got some more beds out of them.
Well, we actually have. We've got £30 million that's built 140 new beds. So I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to push the plug of that, Jess, as well as obviously a new Hayward Walk-in Centre outpatient building.
Would you like to look into the barrel of the camera and say that the NHS is better?
This is a really poor showing from Jess Phillips. Really poor.
Than it was 14 years ago to your constituents.
In Stoke-on-Trent, where's the camera? Stoke-on-Trent has seen hundreds of millions of pounds into our local NHS, and I'll proudly say that when we're on the stump at the election as well.
Yeah, not the best showing from Jess Phillips, but it does show you the hypocrisy of the Tory party. Can't blame the Great Recession, which is one of the biggest economic problems that the world faced, but you can blame Ukraine, which we weren't that affected by, and COVID, which obviously were affected by, but we fumbled. That's why we were impacted more. There's one more little clip I want to show.
I've got to let my fellow podcaster, because I'm about to run to the break. Stability is the change. I mean, it might not be that exciting, but it's working, huh? Yeah, it's working. And actually, do you know what? It seems boring, but do you know, it really, really matters. I have watched the city that I live in have investment that wasn't there when I was a kid brought into it because of the promise of, you know, the big infrastructure, the HS2. And actually, the problem that we are now facing and that north of Birmingham faces is that we now don't know what's going to happen. This constant chopping and changing on things that were meant to drive our country forward, it has just been so tiring.
It's a bit ironic that she's talking about HS2 bringing in investment into Birmingham, but then Labour kind of pulling back on big investment projects. Like, surely if it's the case that big investment projects from the government bring in local investment and private investment, however you want to describe it, for Labour then to say we're going to pull back on that and we're just going to get private investment doesn't really make sense.
And unfortunately, what it has done is, if you look at our rates, if you want some facts, if you look at rates of inward investment and investment within our country, it has been woeful. And we need a ground to build on.
Which is true, but again, like, her point of HS2 is bringing in investment doesn't really make sense. When you've talked about, you know, she's talking about the need for more investment to come into the country, that she then talked about HS2 bringing that investment into the country or helping to bring it in, and then you've got Labour not really committing to more investment because they talk about, you know, boring securonomics. It doesn't really make sense, does it, guys? So yeah, we'll leave it at that. You know, his argument really doesn't make sense. I would, you know, if you do live on Stoke and somehow you've stumbled onto this video, I would like to know if your NHS, if your healthcare service is better than it was 14 years ago, because I think you struggle to find anywhere in the country where, anywhere in England at least, where the healthcare service is better now than it was 14 years ago. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.